Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're taking a look at Ubisoft Worst Company of the Year. This is kind of a more interesting state of gaming, as I'm usually digging into, some aspects of the upcoming industry and how things are changing between like Sony, Xbox, or PC, or even Nintendo. But this is more of an actual company, and I wanted to do Worst Company of the Year because I think it's important to take a look at the best aspects of gaming for the year and also the worst, and that includes companies. And this has got to be Ubisoft. It's amazing how much we've been able to see and how messed up the company is. And like they've had their issues, but like 2018, they've started really kind of going downhill. But like they've kind of had a negative connotation kind of ever since After Siege, because that was 2015. After Siege, this was more of like a live service microtransaction type of business model, and there was a pretty big focus there. And now it's continued on. They've continued. Siege actually has been their biggest grossing game, except for I think it is the biggest grossing game that they've actually had. There's maybe one other game that's actually sold more, but as an IP, Siege has sold almost as much money as the entirety of Assassin's Creed, which is just crazy. Like all of the Assassin's Creed games. Assassin's Creed is like only a few million or like tens of millions ahead in revenue sales compared to Siege, but like they have continued to push toward microtransactions, trying to dish out as much as they can, and two, their games have also gotten kind of a feel for them. Most of us know that everything is kind of laid out on the map. Everything has markers and pointers. The HUD is actually extremely busy. But yeah, first, at least with this decade, it's been the delays. So just some examples. X-Defiant, Skull and Bones, and Star Wars Outlaws are recent games that had delays. And these were actually delayed pretty heavily. I had to take some time to look them up, but Outlaws was delayed for 7 months. X-Defiant was delayed for 8 months. And Skull and Bones, from what we know, was delayed 15 months. 15! And this was like from all of the delays they were kind of having. Now, that's at least what we can confirm. But again, this game was like 13 years in development. Skull and Bones was just becoming a disaster. It was going through directors like crazy, and some of the directors were only there for a few months before just tapping out and being done with this because it was just such a mess. It was also a new team of developers, and it was also a team that Ubisoft had just started, and it didn't really seem to have a lot of experience there, unfortunately. And we can still get that and garnish that from the gameplay. But yeah, the delays, they're just heavy. They're not 2, 3, 4 months. They're like 7, 8, 12 months or plus. Like, it's just horrible. Secondly, the games aren't what we want. I honestly, I don't think they know their audience. We're learning that these games didn't do well or that they tanked, and that's Frontiers of Pandora. Licensing was really expensive, and then they didn't sell enough copies. So, plus the overall cost of the budget and marketing. Prince of Persia: Lost Crown. It was a pretty good game for what it was. But again, it wasn't the game that we wanted. There was a remaster we were waiting for, and that didn't end up happening. We did have one trailer that kind of quickly disappeared after a few months. No more updates. There was some issues going on with the developer and stuff, and like there were just some problems. But yeah, we ended up getting the Lost Crown instead, which again, it was a fine game. It ran well. It worked well. I think it was what the devs intended, but again, it just wasn't the type of Prince of Persia that we wanted. And the other Prince of Persia games, well, we can't even get them. Those 360 versions on the digital stores, we can't even get those, which is incredibly frustrating. Next was Skull and Bones. It didn't hold up to Black Flag or Rogue. Those were two games where they were pirate games, but like in Skull and Bones, you couldn't even really swim. You were stuck to these kind of sections to engage with and stuff, these areas to travel in and whatever, and it was just very unpiratey compared to what Ubisoft had already made. Another one, X-Defiant. Too grindy, lack of content, too many bugs, hacker issues that weren't being dealt with. And again, this was another game that was delayed pretty heavily, but still it didn't really seem to help them because they just constantly had to try to figure out things And they did want to listen to players. I greatly appreciate that. Mark Rubin really was transparent, one of the most transparent CEOs or directors I've ever seen for a video game, which is wonderful. Like, we need more of that. But again, there were so many changes. There were so many things that were frustrating. These weren't just necessarily small changes. I mean, we're talking like pretty big changes that like alters the grinding camos, makes it way longer, and so then they tried to work it back. And then again, with the free to play model, the microtransactions had to be pretty heavy. And everything that they were releasing for new content, you actually had to grind for. And it's not like it was a small grind. I mean, we're talking like 500,000 experience points, 6 or 700,000. I mean, these were getting really pretty big. Star Wars Outlaws, it undersold big time. It undersold so much that Assassin's Creed Shadows was delayed. Again, to guarantee that refinement that, quote, Star Wars Outlaws didn't have. Because the gamers, again, were getting a game that looked pretty good, but like it didn't play very well. There was a way to crash the game 100% of the time just by looking through a scope and looking out over the environment on the first world that you get to explore. The epilogue was very long-winded, but like there were elements that were really fun about the game. Aesthetically, they did pretty good with the game. The ships and the robots and just how like bars or certain areas looked, but again, it was just kind of a basic game. There were flaws too with the gameplay that were frustrating. It's like we're kind of being able to like maybe shoot our way out if necessary, being able to think on our feet, but then we have missions where if you're caught, it's over. Like you got to completely start all the way over and try that again. And that was also incredibly frustrating. And then the NPCs, they were pretty stupid. Now they do have a patch. They've had several patches now to try to work on fixing things and whatever. But again, I just think it's a dead game unless you're going to sell things very cheaply. I don't think Star Wars Outlaws is really going to make their money back or be enough to really uphold Assassin's Creed Shadows. So yeah, these games, Frontiers of Pandora, Prince of Persia, Skull and Bones, X Defiant, Star Wars Outlaws, these have been recent releases just in most of these this year actually. Pandora, I think, was released in like November or December of last year. So this is basically a roster of 12 months. And these games have just flopped. They've done horrible. There's also multiple mobile games that were canceled or shut down that Ubisoft had. There was one released, Champions of Gilmore or whatever, for the PC. But again, that's not really going to go anywhere. That's the stuff surrounding that is that it's just all Bitcoin blockchain type of stuff, NFTs. And yeah, we know it's not a game. We know that's more of a market. Games that are actually done well, like kind of in their entirety fairly recently or that are still going, is Siege. Again, that's their biggest grossing game. We also had Valhalla that was released in 2020, I think. And Valhalla has made over $1 billion. Which is crazy. Motorfest, I guess, is still actually doing pretty well, though I've seen some kind of deeper discounts. And again, these games, they get pretty cheap pretty fast. Takes like 2 to 4 months. Mirage did actually sell pretty well. This kind of went back to the roots of Assassin's Creed, was a smaller title, but like there's issues with shaders, there was issues with the voice acting, there was issues with the writing and the dialogue, there were problems with the parkour movement that wasn't fluid. I even got stuck in a glitch where I'm like bouncing in between different rope lines up above the city and without touching anything. My character is just doing it. So there were still issues on Xbox. And they're probably not likely going to fix these. And again, Mirage was another game where the epilogue was like an hour and a half to actually get to the real game. And Siege, which is crazy, is 10 years old, starting in 2025. It's amazing how long that game's been going. The biggest money makers were Siege and Valhalla, over $1 billion each. And again, I feel like they're kind of reaching for these. They're trying to go for these. But again, they haven't won a game of the year in like over a decade. And Ubisoft used to be really good at making their games. Splinter Cell, Beyond Good and Evil, some of the other Assassin's Creeds that we had. Everyone kind of has their favorite that's different. Mine is like Black Flag and Origins. I just absolutely love those two Assassin's Creed games. We also had Rainbow Six games. We also had Ghost Recon, like Wildlands, was really good. Breakpoint wasn't amazing, but it was still pretty good. And that was 2017 and 19. It's amazing, too, to think that those games are 2 years apart. I'm serious. Look it up. Wildlands and Breakpoint. It's out of this world. But, do we really get excited for games anymore with Ubisoft? I kind of want to make this point because we have the Prince of Persia remake coming in 26. So that's like, a year and a half away. Splinter Cell remake, which we don't even have a release date for. And then we have Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is coming out in February, along with the other Assassin's Creed games that they're making. And it's like, nobody's really excited for these. And again, I don't think Shadows is going to do well enough. I think it's going to do better than Star Wars Outlaws and Skull and Bones and X Defiant. And, I think it's going to make money. But man, they just have a reputation of like a bad company. Like they have a bad reputation that they can't get away from. And they got to shake things up. They got to try something else. Otherwise, well, let's get into their financials, because the third thing is they're just burning money. And what a bonfire it is. For the first time in 30 months, they actually had a positive margin, which means they actually made money, which is insane. Like over 2 years, they finally made some money. But again, the next quarter right after that, or the next 6 months after that, we got it was severely negative again. And this is actually some of the most severe earnings that they've had. Now, they do earnings every 6 months, but like it was down 37%. So the money that they put in, they only got 63% of it back. And that's really bad. They lost $275 million in 6 months. Because again, these other games have underperformed. I mean, frick, like, what are you going to do? I mean, X Defiant and Star Wars Outlaws and some of their mobile games that they canceled, they're just not making money. Revenue was basically cut in half from the previous earnings, the previous 6 months. Which, again, is not good. Your earnings are just in the tank. Their debt is $2.6 billion. Their cash equivalent is $1 billion. And then their market cap is $1.9 billion. And what's insane to me is their cash and total market capitalization, like the value of their company, is only $300 million above what their debt is. So again, the last 6 months, they lost $275 million. So they just need another bad, like really bad 6 months, like Assassin's Creed Shadows, which they're already burning money on. I've heard like they're spending like $10 million a month on Assassin's Creed Shadows, with that delay. Again, I don't know if that's entirely accurate or not. Maybe it's more like $5 million. But yeah, they're spending a few million a month on Assassin's Creed Shadows. And this is a very expensive title for them. And but again, it's just mind-blowing. Like they're basically could be 6 months away from totally failing as a company. And then they'd have to sell. I mean, they'd go bankrupt. Someone else would have to buy them. If we look at the stock price, it shows that the investors and their confidence is basically down since Valhalla in 21. And the stock has lost 90% of its value since Valhalla. So the investors are frustrated because, again, they're not showing growth. They're not showing that they're making money. They're not making good projects. How I think of Ubisoft as a gamer is just like they make okay games. They make games that are buggy. Again, they're open world. They kind of hold my hand too much. And the characters aren't inviting or engaging. They're just kind of generic. And a lot of the gameplay mechanics, too. It's like, oh, yeah, well, it's an Ubisoft game. And I feel like I've played these before. When I had Origins, when I had Black Flag, when I had Rainbow Six Vegas 2. Okay, these all kind of like felt different. Some of the also some of the Splinter Cell games which they've made. It's like these feel different. They kind of have a different kind of overall arching gameplay and style, and like you get to see that. There are some things that are, of course, similar, but there are some differences there. But lately, they've all kind of felt the same, which is frustrating. There's just kind of like this safeness in making their game and chasing the money instead of chasing the experience for the player. That's how they're going to make money. So, from a business standpoint, almost all AAA games have been having big delays, and things, of course, aren't running well. But like Ubisoft just is at another level. It feels like they're just having a horrible time. Players too also aren't buying their games, and the IPs are dying. So they're trying different stuff, but again, it's like, well, your brand as Ubisoft is just now horrible. It's hard to think too, like even with looking at their valuation today, they're worth like $2 billion. Well, let's see, their market cap is $2 billion, and then they have about $1 billion in cash. But yeah, their market cap is $2 billion. They used to be about 20 billion as a company. I remember when they were big. I mean, it was like Ubisoft, and they always made money. But players aren't buying their IP, buying their games, and their IPs just aren't making any money. They have made an announcement too earlier this year that Assassin's Creed is basically just going to be what's coming out. They have like 8 titles. We've gotten 2 or 3 of them so far, which is great. Some of them have been okay. None of them have been wonderful. I think the VR game is coming out next, or if it's not out already. And then, we're getting Assassin's Creed Shadows, and then there's multiple projects after that. But again, Assassin's Creed isn't going to save them. And there's even still issues with, like, Assassin's Creed Shadows of messing up the culture, messing up Yusuke as a samurai, and even using somebody that freaking was supposedly, what's the word here? Even using somebody that was like a historian on the subject of Yusuke. Like, we found out his book is basically just garbage. It's horrible. And all of this really leads to just losing money. I mean, their AAA stuff isn't selling well. They're not wanting to do smaller stuff or smaller titles. They're just, doubling down on big, tripling down on Assassin's Creed, and they're just been losing money for years. And they can't keep doing this. Like, seriously, like we've already talked about, they can't keep losing money. Hundreds of millions in 6 months. That is unsustainable. It also reminds me, too, of like Unknown 6 Awakening, which was a game that came out earlier, and it was just multimedia done wrong. But again, the ultimate focus was just making money, chasing the trends, trying to just shove all of this out here, and just like, people are going to like this. And these companies, man, they're out of touch. I even think of like Firewalk Studios and Herman Holst at Sony, and just being like, Concord is going to be great. No. Same with Redfall. Like, frick me, man, that game wasn't ready from Arcane, and now Arcane's gone. Some of the employees got to go somewhere else, like over at ZeniMax. But, man, I think of Rocksteady, a company that had huge reputation for the Batman Arkham games, and also Hogwarts Legacy was really, really good. But then they had Suicide Squad. It's just like, what is this? This is just the most generic garbage ever. And now they're doubling down on Hogwarts Legacy, which again, I don't think is going to be as great. And I think, again, they're just chasing the money. That's their motive. They're just chasing the money, and they're not actually thinking about the player experience. So I hope I'm wrong. I really do. Because I don't want these companies to fail. I don't want these IPs to just disappear into a black hole of just nobody cares anymore. I want gaming to be good. I want it to get better. I want the players to be thought of first. But I think, again, in order for that to happen, as I've been saying on the channel, we have to have pain. And Ubisoft is definitely experiencing it. And they've got to focus on story and quality and character development. I mean, even what we're looking at now, just the Black Ops 6 campaign has been more fun and engaging, even story wise, than any Ubisoft game that I've played in the last 2 years. And that's bad. That's really bad because, the campaign for COD is not the main focus, right? Of course, it's multiplayer and Warzone. But man, they gotta, yeah, like I said, they gotta change things up over there. But the Guillemot brothers are in control, and that will just continue, I think, to be a problem. So, thanks for tuning in, folks. You can always follow me over at Gaming Garbage 22. I don't do these states of gaming too often, just when there's something to actually talk about. So again, there's going to be gaming news once a week. There's going to be some playthrough stuff, which we're going to accelerate the playthrough release of the sessions in the quarry, just so that we can actually get to Halo 1, which I'm quite excited. And I don't think too many people are too excited about the quarry. There just hasn't been a lot of views on that. But hey, that's okay. For those of you that are still watching, don't worry. We're still going to release everything. I think Lion and I we're doing the last piece of the quarry actually tonight, and that should finish the game for us. And then in January, we're going to do Halo 1. I'm still doing Tomb Raider 3. Kind of had a break from that because, London was just so brutal. But yeah, I'm going to continue to keep doing Tomb Raider 3 as well. And I think some people got frustrated because, again, I kind of took a break from Tomb Raider 3 and was doing other content. Plus, it's been busy. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff coming to Game Pass. There's been a lot of news going on. And it's also the holidays. So, man, and then I got overtime from work on top of that. So it's been very busy. But hey, for those of you that are engaging and, leave some stuff down in the comments. What do you think about Ubisoft? And just, do you even care, really, about what Ubisoft is doing? And, man, I don't know. It is a tough sell, even for me. I generally like to give as much as a chance as I can, but I just don't really care about their games. The only reason I care about their games is to see if they're improving. That's it. I still hold out a little bit of hope that maybe someday they can improve, someday they can figure it out, because they're heading toward bankruptcy, man. That's where they're going. And it's just insane. So with that, folks, hopefully you guys are doing well. See you guys on the next one.